Welcome back, Daisy Cakes. We're here to look at the 1962 Hugo Awards and pick one book from the nominees to add to our TBR. Why? Because I am Daisy X Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. If you haven't seen this TBR game before, I look at the Hugo Awards from days gone by, in this case 1962, read all the nominees, tell you who won, then read the blurbs from all the books, and then pick one to add to my TBR in the hopes of finding a new author or book that I've never heard of before. So let's go ahead and get started with the 1962 Hugo Award nominees. And the nominees are Dark Universe by Daniel F. Galouye, Planet of the Damned by Harry Harrison, Second Ending by James White, Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein, and Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford D. Simak. And the winner is Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein. It is no surprise that Stranger in a Strange Land won the 1962 Hugos because it is such a significant book. It was so significant, in fact, that the Library of Congress named it in their list of the most influential books in American history ever. And it was the very first science fiction book to ever reach the New York Times bestsellers list. Now, I read this back in the 1970s when I was a freshman in high school, and it had a huge impact on me. Now, I've made no secret that I don't want to ever reread this book because it had such an impact for me back in my formative years. And I know that it's not aged well. I know that. So I don't want to spoil my memory of reading it and the impact it had on me. Now, I know a lot of people, especially when they were young and they read it in the 60s, 70s, 80s, that have kept Stranger in a Strange Land in their heart as a very important novel. And I think if you're a reader today, you should look at it through the lens of the time it was written in because it was so impactful. Anyway, I'm not going to choose it for this TBR game, but I will go ahead and read the blurb. A human raised on Mars, Valentine Michael Smith has just arrived on planet Earth. Among his people for the first time, he struggles to understand the social mores and prejudices of human nature that are so alien to him, while his own psi powers, including telepathy, clairvoyance, telekinesis, and teleportation, make him a type of messiah figure among humans. Stranger in a Strange Land grew from a cult favorite to a bestseller to a classic in a few short years. The story of the man from Mars who taught humankind grokking and water sharing and love. It is Robert A. Heinlein's masterpiece. Yeah, I can't argue with that write-up. I think you need to read it with the era that it was written in mind and how it shaped the consciousness of the generations that grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Next, we have Dark Universe by Daniel F. Galouye. And I haven't heard of this author at all. I don't know who he is, so I'm very curious about it. Let's go ahead and read the blurb. Dark Universe, Daniel F. Galouye. The survivors live underground as far from the original world as possible and protected from the ultimate evil, radiation. Then terrible monsters who bring with them a screaming silence are seen and people start to disappear. One young man realizes he must question the nature of darkness itself. Okay, this is a post-apocalyptic novel. I'm not sure I'm in the mood for post-apocalyptic because I kind of feel like we're living that right now. But we'll see. Let's move on to the next one. Planet of the Damned by Harry Harrison. You know I love Harry Harrison. I love his Death World series, and I'm wondering if this is part of the Death World. I'm not sure, but you can't go wrong with Harry Harrison. So let's go ahead and read the blurb. Once in a generation, a man is born with a heightened sense of empathy. Breon Brand used this gift to win the 20s, an annual physical and mental competition among the best and smartest people on Anvar. But scarcely able to enjoy his victory, Brand is swept off to the hellish planet of Dis, where he must use his heightened sense of empathy to help avert a global nuclear holocaust by negotiating with the blockading fleet, traversing the distant underworld and cracking the mystery of the savagely ruthless Magter. Okay, this is not Death World, but it's another nuclear-themed storyline like Dark Universe, which we just read the blurb on that one. And I'm not sure I'm in the mood for this one, but again, Harry Harrison writing about an empath, which we see a lot of telepathy, psionics back in the 50s, 60s, but not so much empath. So that's kind of interesting. But let's move on to Second Ending by James White. Now, I've never heard of James White. I don't believe I've read him before. The cover looks interesting. I'm curious about this. Let's go ahead and read the blurb. A story of the only human survivor on Earth after a series of nuclear wars, accompanied by a group of robots. Okay, that wasn't much of a blurb. I'm still not quite sure what's going on, except we do know it is about nuclear war. Again. Okay, the last book is Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford D. Simak. And I have read Clifford D. Simak before. I think he's a great writer, but he never rose to the levels of Frederick Pohl or Theodore Sturgeon or someone like that. I'm not really sure why. I know in the 70s there was always one or two books on the bookshelf by Simak, and I've always thought he should be more well known than he is now. So let's go ahead and read the blurb. Without setting foot on another planet, people like Shep Blaine were reaching out to the stars with their minds, telepathically contacting strange beings on other worlds. But even Blaine was unprepared for what happened when he communed with the soul of an utterly alien being light years from Earth. After recovering from his experience, he becomes a dangerous man. Not only has he gained startling new powers, but he now understands that humankind must share the stars. Hunted through time and space by those who he used to trust, Blaine undergoes a unique odyssey that takes him through a nightmarish version of small-town America as he seeks to find others who share his vision of a humane future. Blaine has mastered death and time. Now he must master the fear and ignorance that threaten to destroy him. Okay, Simak's book is pretty different from the 3 nuclear holocaust books we blurbed before. I'm very interested in this one. So, looking at all the books, of course, I've read Stranger in a Strange Land. I'm familiar with both Simak and Harrison, and I'm kind of curious about finding a new author, White and Galouye, who neither of whom I've read before. I don't remember reading them, but mostly based on the blurb, I think I'm going to go with Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford D. Simak. Although I've read Simak before, the blurb on this one sounds so interesting, so much more interesting to me than sort of the nuclear holocaust themed books that I guess was very typical in the 60s, at least in science fiction. So I'm kind of excited to read this one. But what about you? What book or books would you have picked after hearing the blurbs? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Next time, I will be reviewing Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford D. Simak, and we'll see how it goes. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.